Welcome to Sodcast, where we talk turf and you grow the results. Today's guest is Vickie Wallace, a senior extension educator with the University of Connecticut, where she leads statewide sustainable turf and landscape programs and delivers science-based, environmentally responsible IPM education. Vickie is a recognized leader in the turf grass industry and was honored with the Dr. William H. Daniel Award at the 2020 Sports Turf Managers Association Conference for her outstanding contributions to sports turf research, teaching, and extension outreach. She also brings deep lawn management expertise from her years in the turf grass seed industry, supported by a strong academic foundation at Penn State University and the University of Rhode Island. Let's join Vickie and Kevin as they dive into practical, science-backed guidance for homeowners.
True environmental steward for our planet, Vickie Wallace. Vickie, thanks for joining us today.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, Kevin, and you're correct. We've known each other a long time through the industry, so I'm very, very happy to be here with you today.
Thanks, Vickie. So for the homeowners out there watching, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, you mentioned I'm a senior extension educator, and so that means I'm in the Department of Extension at the University of Connecticut, and we're the public-facing, the outreach arm for a good bit of any turf grass research, landscape research, what have you. So I run programs for in my line right now, a lot of professional turf grass managers, but I also participate in a lot of the homeowner type programs like Master Gardeners. I teach their turf grass management and their weed management course. I'm involved, for example, with our pesticide recertification program. I run review classes for that, and I work with horticulturalists through the Connecticut Nursery and Landscape Association or Connecticut Groundskeepers Association in terms of providing guidance and information about general turf management. So that's sort of my realm at the University of Connecticut. And as you touched on, prior to that, I worked in the seed industry for very many years, and I would provide guidance for turf grass establishment on lawns or maintenance issues to lawn care, landscape, sports turf, golf professionals in the industry. That's when I met you, obviously, but I also had to do a lot with homeowners. At the time, the seed company that I worked for had a retail product line, grass seed and fertilizer. And, even though a good focus of our area was for the professional turf grass managers, this retail grass seed line was very important. And so they had looked at seed mixtures over time and what would serve the clients for shady lawns or sun and shade lawns or high trafficked areas. And part of my role was to be the technical agronomist for homeowners, because on the side of the boxes, they had for any questions answered, or they, at the time, through trade magazines that, if we advertised in a trade magazine, very often, again, way back when, people would write in questions to the magazines, and we'd in turn get sent these questions. So I dealt with a good number of homeowners over the years, for sure. So
yeah, that's great. No, that's really great stuff. So you gave me a lot there, and you answered the next question. This is great. This is great because and we're going to dive a little bit more into this. But how did you get your passion? How did you find your passion into the grounds industry? Like, how did you?
I got my degree, you mentioned, at Penn State, and I was an ornamental horticulture major. And for a summer job years ago, I needed, because it was years ago now, but I worked in a wholesale greenhouse in the summer, and it was exceedingly hot, and I just didn't like that environment. And, at one point for a summer job, I ended up working for a seed industry that had connections to develop these new grasses. And that was my introduction, my foray into the turf grass world. I went back and took my electives my senior year in college for turf grass maintenance, and and I ended up being offered a job when I was done in sales for this seed company. So I worked for the seed company for over 20 years, had a regular sales territory, then did professional sales and served as an agronomist for them, and traveled and spoke throughout the country. So that was sort of my foray into this seed horticulture world. I've always maintained an interest in lawns and the landscapes of a good number of the professionals that I worked with.
Yeah,
So.
and Vickie, speaking about that, you have taught me so much about IPM, which is integrated pest management. And what advice could you give for the homeowners out there? And let's just say, let's say most in your South region, they're going to have warm season grasses. So let's concentrate more on the cool season grasses. But what would you recommend? What type, since you have so much expertise in cool season grasses and from your seed company and your research and being the head extension authority at University of Connecticut, what's your advice for homeowners out there? Rather than great.
Well, I will tell you from my years of dealing with the homeowners through purchasing seeds and whatnot, I would say the biggest piece of advice I would say is if you are establishing a lawn or maintaining a lawn, make sure you're watering correctly. Mm-hmm. If I had to think back over the years about most of the times that we received homeowner complaints that would say, oh, your grass seed didn't grow. And I would have to go out very often and visit some of these areas. It always came back to the fact that the purchaser of that seed didn't water that area a lot. You have to remember that seed is tiny, very, very tiny, and it needs water to germinate, to start the germination process. It needs water to produce its first shoot and its first root and establish that fibrous root system, right, regardless of whether it's warm season or cool season. And so you need constant moisture during time of establishment. You don't need to flood it, but you need constant moisture in that soil for that plant to really grow and establish. And so what I would see, particularly for homeowners, is very often, and especially if they're working, they'd water early in the morning and then they'd wait till later in the day. And you have the heat of the sun that would warm that soil, and that surface area can dry out very quickly. That's why agronomically, we would always say fall is a great time of year to establish, because you don't have the heat of that summer sun, you don't have the annual weed competition, and you have really more temperate areas and more rainfall typically in that fall when you can establish. But water is that biggest piece, because if that plant doesn't get the water, that tiny seed dies. So you lose it immediately. So that would be the biggest failure that I see for homeowners, is they don't understand that relationship.
Yeah. And that was well said, Vickie. And to some of the homeowners out there, what Vickie is talking about too, I can't help but get granular because I love what I do. But when you have that seed, what Vickie is saying is it's endosperm inside this seed, right? And when you dampen it and you keep dampening it, you don't want to rot the seed. You don't want to flood it. That causes disease pressure and so much other stuff. You just want to keep it moist, and you want to break down that cambium. If I'm saying that wrong, Vickie, please correct me. But you want to break down the
seed coat. Yeah, you want to make sure that
you want to break that down. Then you want to get that primary root to come out, and then that's
the start of it.
Yep, that's the start of it, and that's great information. So keeping it damp, consistently damp, not overwatering, but just consistently damp until that primary root exposes. And then it's going to catch on like wildfire, and then you get into another.
And if there was another besides the water, they have to remember that endosperm is tiny, and so it has its nutrients that's there for it to germinate. And once it germinates, it needs supplemental food source. So again, whether you're looking at a synthetic fertilizer product or an organic fertilizer product, however it is, but it needs food, just like we as humans need to
Yes.
eat and eat a balanced diet. This plant needs food to survive too. So you can't expect it to germinate and thrive without some food source.
Yes.
So
And again, I want Vickie, if you could just elaborate a little bit, because you taught me so much about IPM. What is
okay.
IPM? Why is it important for homeowners to understand IPM? And if you could get more into that just a little bit.
Sure. So integrated pest management, and the IPM is the first initial of each of those three. But integrated pest management is exceedingly important, and it's been used for years in the agricultural community for dealing with food crops, grain crops. But it really talks about using the best protocol, whether cultural practices, mechanical, when you're talking about removal of pests, and really encouraging plant health, as opposed to, if you have a healthy plant, you have less problems with any sort of pest, and that pest can be insect, disease, or weed. There's three main categories of pests. So depending on whatever you're dealing with, you need a healthy plant to outcompete and establish and maintain itself from that standpoint. And you can do that 100% culturally, or you can do that by using some sort of a pest management product. If you get to a point where you're still having pest competition that's not warranted or is problematic, for, if we're talking about turf here right now, and you were going to use a product, then you would use that product to manage that pest. And so you could manage it and kill the pest immediately, or it might be a long-term process that you're looking at in combination with cultural practices such as water and nutrients, as well as that. But some people think, because they hear the word pest management in the term, that it means it's always using some sort of a pesticide, and that is not the case. So integrated pest management is using multiple tactics to manage a pest. And remember, I'm saying manage, not control.
Right.
So you can still have pests, but if the host plant or the plant that you're trying to manage is healthy enough to outcompete that, you're not bothered by that pest.
Right.
So that's what you really have to look at. But pesticide use by professional turf managers is really, really, really a minimal tactic. They go through all the other stages of IPM before they even might consider some sort of a product. And in the world of sports turf management, for example, when you're dealing with the health and safety of players, that's where they would make a decision if something's going to impact the safety of the player. So, there's many factors to consider, but definitely in terms of professional turf managers, I don't see pest management used that often.
Right.
So
And
I
that's
see
true.
more of it used in the homeowners.
That's actually true, and I can vouch for that too as a last resort. So yeah. So Vickie, thank you. That was really, really great. In explaining the IPM for everyone to understand, and also have a training video on it. So if you guys are watching this, check out my training video on IPM. It's a lot of things that Vickie mentioned, and it's exactly true. A lot of us professionals, we don't use pesticides just as a first result. We do mechanical, we do all types of things before we even apply pesticides. So that's great advice, Vickie. Thank you so much.
Kevin, one quick thing with regard to that. If you're dealing with a professional, they also have to have a pesticide license.
That's right.
To put product on a property, where a homeowner can put a product on their own property. So they've gone through additional training, just like, dealing with a medical doctor and understanding. There's different protocol and training that is involved. So it does require expertise. And so that's something that I really want to make clear that
Great point.
they understand what products that if there was a recommendation to use a product, they have studied, they have tried to understand which would be the best possible product.
And we talked about this with another guest I had on the show, and the homeowners have a right to look at the label or the MSD or the SDS. I'm still calling it the MSDS, but the SDS. And sometimes what you really want to look at is just the reentry. And a lot of the times professionals are putting down, whether it's, herbicides or fungicides or whatever they're putting on your lawn. The reentry is what you really want to look for, And a lot of times, most of the pesticides today are really under a caution. And we don't need to get to all the caution or the dangers and all that kind of stuff of pesticides, but the reentry is it's very quickly. It's when it dries on some of them. So it's really good to look at it before you assume that the pesticide is really bad. So that's a great point, Vickie. And you are so trained and disciplined in this IPM that you've taught me a lot of it over the years, and many other professionals that I know over the years. So with that, do you have anything you'd like to add, Vickie, to the homeowners out there?
I would say to please recognize that professionals have expertise that they might lack, and to use those individuals as resources and to help provide you with, if it's the lawn or the landscape that you need to deal with, because they do understand the whole life cycles of the turf, or the main crop they're trying to work with. And because I see in my years as an extension professional and from my previous years that if there were mistakes, I hate to say it, but it was most often done on the homeowner end. So
that's wild, because
I hate saying it, but it's very much the truth.
That's what this show is for, so we can educate and train homeowners out there. You've always got a guy or a gal in the neighborhood that wants to have that best looking lawn, and there's nothing wrong with it. But having advice from people like yourself, and it can really help them a long way.
And every state has extension service and extension professionals that they work with. And so I work statewide, but within the state, very often there might be county offices where you can take samples in, or you could reach out to professionals and they can get they can find out the answers, whether it's from people like myself or other faculty at the land grant universities. But every state has a land grant university with an extension, professionals.
Yes, and thank you for saying that. I wasn't even thinking about that, but that's a great tip for the homeowners out there. Take advantage of it. It's there. I mean, your tax dollars are going to work. Take advantage of it. Use those extension offices to help you with your lawns, whether it's warm season, cool season, what have you. Those experts are out there to give you advice and to guide you, and to let you know maybe you're doing it right or maybe you're doing it wrong. We're all not perfect, but that's great advice, Vickie. And I want to personally thank you, Vickie, for joining us today. It's always great having.
It was a nice treat to be here.
Oh, thanks, and it's good seeing you again. And remember, here at Sodcast, we talk turf and you grow the results. See you next time.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Sodcast, where we talk turf and you grow the results. A big thank you to Vickie Wallace for sharing her science-based, environmentally responsible insights and practical turf management wisdom. Her expertise gives homeowners the tools to make smarter, more sustainable decisions about their lawns and landscapes. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with anyone who wants healthier, better managed turf. And remember, great results come from learning, applying the right practices, and staying curious about the ground beneath your feet. If you have any questions for Vickie, send them to sodcast@mail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time on Sodcast. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep your turf in top shape.